Hey guys, how's it going? Welcome back to the channel. So today I'm pretty excited and pretty pumped up because we have the Holo Spring 2 Kitsune Tuned Edition R2R DAC here for review. Now after I finished reviewing the Pontus R2R DAC from denafrips and then the Tube DAC from Doge, the Doge 7 Tube DAC, many of you have been commenting in the comment section, hey, you have to check out Kitsune, you have to check out Holo Spring. So here it is. I finally got my hands on it. I called up Kitsune and I said, hey, can you guys offer a little comparison? And they were happy to oblige. So they sent me the DAC here. No, I do not get to keep it, if that's what you were wondering. But I did get to experiment with it for a month. So I have a very good understanding of what this DAC can do and what it's about and how it compares to the Pontus and the Doge 7 Tube DAC that I loved so much. So in this video, we're going to do some comparisons. We're going to go briefly into what this DAC is so good, why people love it so much, and all that good stuff. So make sure to subscribe and hit that bell notification so you don't miss any of these videos. And let's get straight to it. So there's like 3 versions of these, like I mentioned, right? So this is the Kitsune Tuned Edition, which makes it special because it has multiple different upgrades. And I'm not gonna name all of it here because you can check on their website and you can check all the upgrades they've done to the unit to call it a Kitsune Tuned Edition. But essentially, the most important thing that I can spot is that the transformer is 4N silver. So it's pure silver. And the internal wiring is all silver, so all the fancy stuff, the fancy Mondorf capacitors, fancy remote, which we'll talk about the remote in a second. But we have very beautiful design here in terms of aesthetics. Number one, no questions asked. If I want a nice looking DAC on my rack, this is it. Pontus doesn't look as good. The Doge 7 doesn't look good at all in comparison to this beauty. It is absolutely stunning looking. I mean, the side copper, just absolutely stunning. But back to the upgrade. The internal R2R ladder you see here is also hand-picked by them as well. So it's like special treatment kind of thing. So obviously with the Kitsune Tuned Edition, they tuned it very precisely. They want that precision and they want that extra little bit to make it extraordinary for the buyer. So basically that's what the Kitsune Tuned Edition is. Now if you're wondering how it compares to the other 2 units that's not Kitsune Tuned Edition, I unfortunately don't know because I would love to know, but I don't because I have not heard those units. So I can only speak from what I heard. Now the Kitsune Tuned Edition, it is a little bit more expensive. It is around $2,700, making it the most expensive DAC out of the 3, the Pontus, the Doge 7, and this Kitsune DAC. So it is the most expensive, and I think it's rightfully so because it is a sound that a lot of people prefer. Now, before jumping straight into the sound, if you look in the back, we have the XLR and the RCA outputs. We have the digital inputs. So we have practically all the inputs that we see on the Pontus and the Doge 7, if not more. So we have a good variety of inputs for digital, and we both have XLR and RCA outputs. So to me, that looks very good, just perfect for a DAC at this price point, in my opinion. Now looking in the front, you have the mute button, you have the display intensity, oversampling, and source. And can I just comment how nice these buttons are? These are copper buttons and they just scream build quality and just quality in general. This is exceptional build quality at this price point as far as I'm concerned. Now looking at the actual functions, that's also impressive. You have display intensity, which you don't really get with DACs these days. So a little bit of attention to detail. That's really nice because, you know, when you turn the lights off or you just don't want the display to be beaming at you, there you go. You can turn off the display. We also have the oversampling and the non-oversampling modes. I prefer the non-oversampling by far in comparison to the oversampling on this DAC specifically. And I would stay with the non-oversampling. That's what I stayed with for my listening sessions throughout. I changed to oversampling a few times and I didn't really like it, so I switched it back to non-oversampling and I stayed with it. Now jumping straight into sound. So sound is going to be interesting because in comparison to the Pontus or the Doge 7, I wouldn't say this DAC is superior, but it is a preferable DAC to many. And the reason I say that is because it sounds so smooth. So even though the Doge 7 and the Pontus did sound smooth, it didn't sound as smooth as this DAC did. This DAC is the smoothest out of the three, and it's not a very subtle difference. This DAC is very, very smooth. And some people may even say it's a little bit rolled off or too laid back. Personally, I didn't find it that way. I just found it extremely smooth, butterly smooth. And if anything, this is a sound that a lot of people would associate analog sound to. So, for example, when I was listening to tracks like Just a Little Lovin', with the Doge 7 DAC, it is the most brightest in comparison to the other two DACs. It has a lot of air, a lot of spaciousness, and 3D dimension. And then with the Pontus, I found that it sounded the most neutral, kind of the most neutral out of the three. And with the Kitsune, you get that a little bit more laid back sound in comparison to the other two. In terms of the bass, all three have equal amount of bass and great authority and all that, good information, texture, and all that. I didn't find any major differences in the bass region. I think it's more to do with the mid-range and the high frequency. And it is so smooth that even my friend, Tujin, for some of you that may know, he's very prone to brightness. So when he's listening to music, he would always be like, oh my God, I see why you like the Doge 7J, but it is a little bit too bright for me. Even the Pontus, he was like, oh, it's just there. He loves the Kitsune, and he's actually thinking of buying one for himself because it's just butterly smooth. At no point do you feel fatigue. And if you find that you have not experienced DACs that just sounds butterly smooth, and you found every other DAC to be sounding edgy, this may be it. You may be just prone to bright frequencies in general. And if you haven't heard a difference with DACs, I guarantee you will hear a difference with this DAC in comparison to other Delta Sigma DACs or even R2R DACs or even Tube DACs, because you notice it immediately. The sound is very smooth. Now another thing about this DAC is it's also a laid back in terms of sound staging. So instead of the sound being a little bit forward, so instead of the vocals being a little bit more forward in the Doge 7 and then slightly more back on the Pontus, now the Kitsune is all the way back here. So the sound staging is thrown behind the speakers quite more significantly than the other two DACs I'm talking about in this video. So that may be your thing. You may want the singer to be a little bit more farther away from you. You want that more kind of sound staging that's thrown in front of you instead of at you. Now, one thing that I have to really give big props to is the overall tuning of this DAC. Now, when you have a laid back sound signature like this in a DAC, usually what you get is a kind of grainy nature to the sound. Well, you don't get that with this DAC. It has no grain whatsoever. It is just as resolute as the denafrips, Pontus, or the Doge 7. It just sounds absolutely great with imaging separation. It has no grain that I particularly find annoying in comparison to the Pontus or the Doge 7. Now, of course, it's not as resolute as the, let's say, the denafrips Terminator or the Terminator Plus. It's not as good as pinpoint imaging and separation and those micro nuanced details that you see with the denafrips Terminator and the Terminator Plus, but you get as much resolution as the Pontus and the Doge 7 DAC without a doubt. So I found that very impressive while keeping that laid back sound signature without having that grainy nature that you see a lot with laid back sounding DACs in general. So it's a matter of preference. I wouldn't say that it is better than the Pontus or the Pontus is better than the Kitsune or Doge 7 is. I really wish that I can just pick one and say, hey, this is it. But it's really due to my preference. And my personal preference is a smoother sound. So depending on the system that I'm creating for myself, I would choose the Kitsune if I wanted a more laid back sound. I would choose the pontus if I wanted a more neutral sound. And if I wanted a little bit of that tube magic in the mid-range and a little bit more that holographic and airiness and a little bit more excitement on the top end, then the Doge 7 would be it. So it really depends on your taste, the system that you're going with, and the matching. The matching is the most important part in my opinion. Because let's face it, the Kitsune is a laid-back sounding DAC, but it's not going to fix every problem you have. So by you watching this video, and let's say you have a bright sounding speaker that you just hate, the Kitsune is not going to fix that. The Kitsune is not going to fix a bright sounding speaker. It's not going to nuke it to a luscious, warm sounding speaker. Just not going to happen. Same thing with amplifiers. If you have a bright sounding amplifier that you just can't take, then the Kitsune is not going to fix that problem. What it is going to do is if you have already a pretty resolving system and you want a little bit of that smoothness, a little bit more of that smoothness, let's say, then the Kitsune would be a great choice. So for example, a lot of the people that I talk to on my Patreon want just a little bit of that taste of tube magic, a little bit of that, softness, that smoothness and holographicness added to their sound. They don't want the entire sound to change. They just want a little bit of taste. And the Kitsune does that. So if you already don't have a DAC and you're considering an upgrade or whatever, then the Kitsune here would do exactly that. It would add a little bit of that tube magic because it does have that analogish sound while making everything a little bit more liquid, a little bit more smooth on the top end. So that's where this DAC should be used to complement your system. So in my opinion, I think this is an excellent DAC, excellent attention to detail. And I would definitely have to say and emphasize once again, if you want a sexy looking DAC, this is it. This just looks absolutely gorgeous. Now, one thing this DAC has over the other two is the gorgeous remote. Yes, the Doge 7 does come with a remote, but this is another level. In fact, this is the best remote I've ever encountered. In fact, I've had a lot of remotes in here because of what I do, the nature of reviewing. I have stashes and stashes of the remote, and the Kitsune remote just stands out. Absolutely incredible looking, gorgeous looking buttons, and it's a pleasure to hold. It's not something that you will just toss around and forget about. It's something you would frame. It's just absolutely gorgeous looking. I just absolutely love the aesthetics of this DAC in general, and the remote just tops it off. So that's it from me. Thank you for watching. Make sure to subscribe if you haven't already, and if this video was helpful to you, consider joining our Patreon to keep us independent and keep these honest videos and reviews coming. Until next time.